Welcome to 1000 PS, welcome to Austria, and we're going to pitch BMW's new GS 1300 against the new 1200 Tiger, the GT Pro from Triumph. So which is going to come out on top? It's going to be a test of the giants. So I'm unsure if the guys at 1000 PS invited me to do the test of the two big adventure bikes because I'm the smallest guy they know. But luckily for me, both bikes have got the ability to reduce the preload from the rear shock with a touch of a button. It's a new feature on the 1200 Tiger from Triumph for 2024, and it's an accessory for the GS for 2024. So even though they are both quite sizable bikes with large seat heights, one press of the button lowers the shock, and even I could safely get 2 feet on the ground. But aside from the side, both bikes are aimed at a very similar audience. Both the premium end of their range, both shaft driven. In terms of power, then it's a win for the Triumph because this is the most powerful adventure bike with a shaft drive. So this is 148 horsepower as opposed to 143 for the new 1300 GS. The GS has seen a significant increase in power, now it's gone up to 1300 GS, so it's right on the heels of the big Triumph. In terms of torque, it's a flip, because the GS has got more torque, 105 foot-pounds, as opposed to 95 foot-pounds of torque on the Triumph. So it's a win on torque for the GS, which is no surprise, because remember, that is a 1300 now. She's much bigger than the big Triumph. In terms of rider aids, very similar. In terms of spec, very similar. Semi-active suspension, as I'd mentioned before, removing the preload, cornering ABS, traction control, multiple rider aids, manual screen opposed to electronic screen, both TFT displays, heated grips, heated seats. As you can see, they're both aiming at a very similar market. In terms of price, the base GS starts at 15,995, the TE is 18,495, and this GT Pro is 17,295. So in this spec, to get the GS to the same spec as the Triumph, you're having to spend a little bit more money on the GS. And if you get a little bit carried away ticking the accessories boxes, you can easily get north of £20,000 on the GS. So in terms of price, then the Triumph comes in a little bit more cost effective than the big GS. The unique point of the big Triumph was always its comfort, its power and its punch. But now BMW have increased capacity, increased power. It's almost on par with the Triumph. When we're doing some big miles down the Autobahn, the big Tiger has always been a firm favourite. But the GS is just as good now. It's got more torque, it's got near enough the same horsepower. It's got an electric screen as opposed to a manual screen. The clocks are way more informative, intuitive and easier on the eye. The Triumph clocks are good, but they're just slow and just not intuitive. The switchgear is not as intuitive as I want it to be. And it's just not as refined as the GS. The GS feels like I'm riding a 15 to 20,000 pound bike when I'm riding it. The Triumph, not so. So even though they're pretty close when it comes to big miles and touring, when it comes to handling, fun and sports factor, then the separation starts to divide. The Triumph is good. You have to make compensations for its weight, its physical size and the power and the torque. But you don't have to do that on the GS. The GS feels way lighter, way more lively, way more feel, smaller, narrower, more agile. If you didn't know, you'd think that was like a smaller engine in capacity than the Tiger. The GS feels much more lively, much more easier to ride. There's more feedback, there's more transmission, there's more willingness. Like if I was to go up one of these beautiful mountain passes we have here in Austria against a stopwatch, the GS would be considerably faster. And now before you all click at the comments below, oh Chad, it's not a race. I know it's not a race. if I've got a pillion on the back and I want to attack a mountain pass with ease and just rely on the feedback and the chassis and just enjoy the ride and get a flow going, it's going to be the GS every time. I just don't have that one-to-one feeling with the Tiger. Yes, it will go through a series of corners, but it feels like I'm kind of asking it to do something that it doesn't really want to do. It's like taking a toddler to the dentist. It just doesn't really want to go that way. Where the GS is just willing and flowing and lovely and sweet to ride. Previously, when I've done similar tests with the big Tiger and the GS, there's been a noticeable gap between the two because the GS has lacked power and it's been almost on par with weight and handling. But because BMW have made such an improvement with the GS, not forgetting that the 1250 GS is a brilliant bike, BMW have really upped their game, which has really kind of tilted the balance in favour of the GS. Honestly speaking, I think some riders, maybe some bigger riders that we have here at 1000 PS, may prefer the comfort and the ergonomics and the big bike feel of the Tiger. But I think everybody else is going to love the GS for its versatility. It can do almost everything the Tiger can do, but the Tiger can't do what the GS can do. So we've hoped you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. We've got 2 separate videos on both bikes. We've got into more detail on the changes for the new 2024 Tiger and how it's a little bit less vibey and less able to stall at slow speeds. We've got into more detail with the GS and the changes between the 1250 and the 1300. So check those 2 out. If you've got any more technical questions, fire them below and we'll get back to you.